I also love the article you wrote on how wrestling needs a belt system like jiu-jitsu. And I think you're spot on there, or at least some way to differentiate the levels, because like, think about going to a jiu-jitsu tournament. I'm a white belt and I get stuck up with a black belt and I must think I suck. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, that would never happen, you know? So I just love your
Yeah,
thoughts on that.
exactly. So, by the way, I commend you on your research. You're pulling out all the stuff from years ago. I did. I wrote that article probably 15 years ago. It was called "The Merits of the Belt System," and the basic thesis was that wrestling, in martial arts, everyone knows about the belts, right? Like you're in a conversation with someone and you tell them you're in martial arts. What's the first thing they say? What belt are you, right? And so it's a good way to measure your progress, and more importantly, it's a good way to develop a sense of pride and sort of ownership over the process for young people, and a way to track your progress and your achievements. I think in wrestling, that's missing, and I think particularly the younger kids at like the IKWF level, if we could translate it into a belt system, I think people would stick with it more and would understand the nature of progressing more than they do now. I also think, by the way, that later in life, we would be able to recruit many more people into the sport or keep them in the sport. I competed, believe it or not, competitively as recently as like 3 years ago, because I started competing in the old man tournaments. I got an itch to
No
get back.
way.
Yeah, there's a club called the Chicago Wrestling Club with guys in there, all shapes and sizes. I mean, there are some guys in there who are like post collegiate or just wrapping up collegiate, who are like D1 All Americans. There are like guys from Russia or the Ukraine in there who are literally like world caliber athletes. And then there are 65-year-old men in there who wrestled in college or high school 300 years ago, and basically are just trying to push a little bit to break a sweat. And you've got everything in between, right? So when I tell friends, or when I told friends at the time that I was doing that, the common reaction I got was, well, why? And what struck me about that is, if I would have told them I was doing jujitsu, no one would say why. If I told them that I was doing, swimming, no one would say why. But when I tell them I'm doing wrestling at 40 years old plus, everyone says, well, why the hell would you do that? So, I think that the belt system is an example of where that's how you keep people in the sport, is that you create a system where people of all age have a way to progress and to measure their progress and to stick with it.
And I love that at the kid level, it de-emphasizes external results, because you could advance through the belt system all through your own merit simply by persistence and being disciplined in class, irrespective if you win anything. Whereas like in youth wrestling, I feel like if you don't qualify for state, you think you're a nobody, but really that doesn't even matter,
That's exactly right. Perfect example, like that kid who basically gets throttled by someone, in the Harvey Twisters, right? Goes home and he's like, well, I pretty much suck at wrestling. It's like, well, no, you're a green belt, or you're a brown belt, or whatever it is. Like, that's something to be really proud of. And that's something that most people don't have. So I really believe that the belt system ought to be incorporated in some way. But wrestling is slow to change things, as we know.
A lot of tradition, but I think there is hope. There's some organizations that are doing kind of like the novice bracket, or even if there's not like 7 belts like there is in jiu-jitsu or whatever it is, if there's just like 3, like, I don't know, like expert, mediate, novice, I think that would do a lot, just because, youth wrestling is so competitive, and like, you feel like you're forced to specialize when everyone knows deep down that's not the answer for raising the best athlete or even the best kid.